So my name is Jessica Angelis, and I am a senior social worker with Hennepin County. I'm a master's level social worker, and I'm embedded in the Minnetonka and Plymouth Police Department. As it stands right now, police officers, when they notice someone has some kind of mental health issue that may be contributing to them being called, they'll send me a report. And then from that report, I reach out and see if there's anything I can offer. And so we get reports for a variety of issues, but mainly they have to do with like obvious mental health concerns, like someone might be suicidal, they might be intoxicated, they might be dealing with some kind of psychosis, delusion, all that kind of thing. And I think as we've been doing this work, because we've been here for about 2 years now, we've been seeing a lot more situations where we could be involved. And so that's kind of the new direction we're heading, is how could we be involved in more situations rather than just the obvious mental health concerns.
Mm.
My main function is to follow up after something happens and come up with a kind of a plan. So my history is working with psychiatric crisis, and the psychiatric field calls it stabilization. So we stabilize mental health symptoms, get people connected to the resources that they need to help prevent further crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And then with that, what we know is that some people have crisis. It doesn't happen just one time. And so if there's a future event, sometimes I can go out to the scene when officers are out there so that we can come up with a plan as it's happening. The nature of repetitive calls, we get a lot of them. I think that's the bulk of what police are hoping we can help with. Because it often is the case that if police are going out regularly, there is some kind of mental health concern going on. People tend to only call police if they don't know what else to do. And so if we can come up with some other plans for those individuals, we can try to prevent the crisis in the first place.
Yeah.
And sort of redirect them to other services. Now, those other services aren't always available 24/7. So there's a lot of work that, we're not doing this in a silo. There's a lot of other work that also is going on throughout the county and throughout the state. But that's kind of our focus, is the immediate needs and trying to redirect people from law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Crisis is a big need. I think that our crisis teams are wonderful and they do as well as they can. And there's always room to grow those teams. We know where those needs are. I think there is movement in housing services. There's programs that are being fortified right now, getting people connected to more solid housing. There's we do have a crisis team, and it's wonderful. They respond regularly. I think that there is always room to grow those kinds of services, though, and streamline them to either more specific response areas or have more staff available to take on those kind of calls. There's also a lot of work going on in criminal justice, right? We have triage teams to move people into different kinds of courts where there's more supportive engagement for them. So if there is some kind of criminal issue, we can resolve that is coming from their mental health, we can resolve some of that. And I guess my wish list really would be to have a whole bunch of us doing this work. It's being here for 2 years. I'm in 2 departments, and it's a lot of need. There's a lot of need. And they take us very seriously. The police departments are wonderful, and they are very supportive. And want us also to be successful. So it's very much a team effort. There's just a lot of need. So we currently have 11 staff, 10 or 11. Um, and we are in multiple departments. Some of us are in more than one, and some of us are in just one. Bloomington actually has two social workers, one who's working specifically with opioid response, and then the other is doing more general kind of mental health work. And we're growing pretty rapidly. There are lots of departments who are interested, and like I said, our departments are starting to split because we're finding that not only is the workload a lot, because I think that people deserve our attention and our time, and it's really hard to spread out between everyone that needs it. And then also the cultures in the departments are so different because they're discrete systems that they also need a lot of attention, and in a relationship building kind of way, right? They want to know what we're doing, we want to know what they're doing, and kind of figure out how we can work together. And that's hard when there's two different or three different, in some cases, systems, but we're making it work and we're doing it. Ideally, I think we'd have probably 10 to 15 people at a time. Realistically, we're working with, I probably have 40 open on my caseload right now. So, and it ranges, sometimes I have 10 to 15, and sometimes I have upwards of, I've had as high as 60 at a time, people that I'm trying to follow up with. So it is, the thing about crisis services is you can never predict a crisis. And so you have to balance the high need with what the low need is also. So there's a lot of ebbing and flowing to this work that at times is challenging, but also is kind of exciting because you see the most progress with people when they're in crisis. They are really willing and motivated to change, and there's things that we can do, and they're often not aware of the services we have available. So it's great to be able to walk people through that. I read reports, and then I make phone calls. I meet with officers. I sometimes go on ride-alongs, and we'll go with officers. So a couple weeks ago, I went for, 6 hours or something with an officer. And we went to some calls, and it was great because this officer had no idea what really I did, and I was able to be helpful right there in the moment. And she was kind of like, "Oh, I had no idea this could be a mental health issue." I was like, "Well, yeah, absolutely. This is something I can help this person with." People who are supported do better, right? We all do better when we have people in our corner. And sometimes people don't know how to find them, how to find those people. So one of the big things I refer people to is case management. And there's a variety of different kinds of case management. There's ARMS services, which is adult rehabilitative mental health services. And basically they're skills based, and they help you kind of manage your schedule and help you come up with a way to make sure you're making it to your appointments. And they kind of help you with tasks and managing your mental health symptoms. And then there's targeted case management, which is somebody who helps coordinate between your psychiatrist and your therapist and whatever providers you have to make sure that everyone's talking, everyone's on the same page, everyone knows what's going on. And then if there's a hole in your services, they're responsible for helping fill that hole. Then there's ACT, which is assertive community treatment, and they do kind of all of those services in one team. So they have this team approach where they go out and meet with people in their homes. They might have a psychiatrist come straight to them to help them connect to, or to help them make sure that they're making it to their appointments, right? We have in-home nursing that we sometimes can hook people up with if they have trouble taking their meds. We have, there's Housing services are a big one. There are some big holes in housing. The biggest one is if you lose your housing, there's not a great option other than emergency shelter where you can go quickly. Um, the other thing is a lot of people, there's a program called Rising Cedar that is one of my absolute favorite programs I've ever come across, and it's housing. And then they have all of these services in the housing. They have a garden, they make meals for people. They have, there's this whole great like trauma-informed setup, safe place for somebody to land, but they have their own space. You have your own apartment and it's a big complex, and you have everyone there needs a little bit of support from someone. And so it's just this great community. I wish we had one of those in every city. I mean, I think that would be a phenomenal resource for people. The other thing that I've found that has been really an interesting tidbit is that housing, private housing generally works really hard to keep people in their housing. They give people a lot of opportunities. They do a lot of things before eviction is on the table, which I hadn't realized, because usually I was swooping in at the end, when somebody was getting evicted. But unless that person is engaging in services, we don't have good ways of hooking those individuals who are at risk into services. And so that's one area I think we could do more in, is those people who are tenuously housed, how can we hook them into services? Because those kinds of relationships take a lot of time to build, and we just don't have that time in the models we have set up right now. We could do it, but it would look very different than how we have services. The high turnover in our services. I work with people very short term. I reach out a couple times. If you're not answering, I have to move on because I don't have the time to spend, trying to engage you. So that's something we really could improve. I don't know what that would look like, but that's something we definitely could do better. It's that relationship building when people have trauma. You're trying to, if you've experienced a lot of trauma, you're not wanting to this person is going to let you down. They're going to hurt you. They're going to, you're going to fall through the crack again. And that's exactly what happens, because we don't have the time to make sure that they know they can trust us.
Yeah.
The causes of trauma can be anything. It could be something big like, sexual abuse in childhood or physical abuse, something like that, or it could be kind of that idea of death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? All these little things that just build over time. And so the how it happens isn't as important as us recognizing it for what it is and doing something about it when we see it. I think that's the place where we can make the most improvement and help people, really, because the how they get there matters in a therapy setting or in their individual life, but as a system, the how doesn't matter as much as it's there. We see it, we know that that's what's happening, so what do we do about it? And one of the big things that helps with trauma is building trust. And I think that's very much what we're doing in the police departments, is we're building trust with the police department. We're also helping the community build some trust with the police department, because we're kind of this intermediary of, we're here to support you. They hooked me up with you. So they see that this could be helpful, that you could use something like this. And so even if that your interaction with them wasn't great, because sometimes it's not, they still saw something that made them think that you might want this extra support. And I will say trauma-informed care or trauma-informed policing is a very brand new, we're in the infancy of that whole idea. And so it's like the police departments feel that there's something they're missing, but they're not quite there to really understanding what it is. And that's why this is so exciting, because it is this kind of new field that we can really make a big impact in. If you're calling about yourself or you're calling about your immediate family, you can call COPE, the psychiatric crisis team. You can call your health insurance company and ask, them to hook you up with a therapist. You can even call Front Door, which is our Hennepin County's main number to get hooked up with services. That's an option. We also have a mental health center. Hennepin County also has the Behavioral Health and Wellness Center at 1800 Chicago, where people can drop in and see providers right away. And so there's options. But I guess for a first call, calling a program like COPE or calling a warm line, even the National Suicide Lifeline, the NSPL line, that's a great option too, because they can talk you through what might be available. If you're calling about somebody else, like a neighbor, it gets a little more complicated. That would probably be a 911 call if you're concerned about a neighbor, because you just don't know necessarily unless you're close with them. And I think that's the hard part, is if you see those things in somebody else that you're not necessarily close with, it's hard to figure out what to do to help. So I kind of fell into crisis services. I was in graduate school for counseling, and I had an opportunity to do an internship at Crisis Connection, which is now no longer available. That is something we could add back, is Crisis Connection, or something like that. Like I said before, the immediacy of people's needs and you being able to help in such a discrete, compact way to make big changes in their life is a big draw for this type of work. The other thing is, I was doing psychiatric crisis services for a long time, and we were very siloed. The crisis services are kind of by themselves, even at the county. And so we were starting to see police push back on us a little bit. And I was like, I feel like there's something here that we can do better. And that's really why I took this position, because I think that what I found is that we're doing a lot of the same work, just it looks different and the focus is different. Their role is different in someone's life than my role is. And so that's really what drew me to this work. It is taxing, but I also think it's very rewarding, because you can make that such a big difference in people's lives so quickly. But I do know that we're funded 60-40, 60% by the police departments and 40% by the county. And then they're funded through grants and the city and the county, and they deal with the hodgepodge, I think. It is a hodgepodge, is my understanding.
Yeah.
So that is makes it complicated, because you don't get funded.
Right.
Yeah. But I do think there's a lot of pressure, and not pressure, maybe pressure. There's a lot of support and a lot of desire for us to keep growing and doing this and to make it work well. So I think that we would be able to find support and funding as it's needed.
Yeah.